911, there's a trespasser. At my auction, that's what HOA President Barbara Mitchell screamed into her phone when she saw me. The actual owner returned early from my trip. I'd been gone 5 days, yet there she stood on my ranch, auctioning my 3-door million property to 50 strangers, while a sign declared, "Seized by OA my mortgage, paid OA fees." Current, her excuse, I hadn't mowed my lawn in a week. When the cops arrived, I simply smiled and reached into my truck. What I pulled out next made Barbara's face turn white as a ghost, and the entire crowd gasped. By sunset, everything had changed. What's the craziest HOA story from your area? Comment below. Ryan Morrison had just returned early from his business trip to Silicon Valley. The plan was originally 7 days, but the project finished early, so he came back after 5 days. The taxi had just left when Ryan was stunned by the scene before him. About 50 people were gathered on the lawn in front of Willow Creek Ranch. Barbara Mitchell, in her blinding hot pink suit and blonde hair fixed as hard as a helmet, was standing on a makeshift wooden platform. She was live streaming on social media with the caption, "Justice for Willowbrook HOA." Written across the screen, this 50-acre lot, Barbara waved, toward the horse stables includes a 5-bedroomed room main house, 20-stall horse barn, and access to a natural lake. Starting bid, $2 million. Ryan felt blood rushing to his head. He quietly took out his phone to record video, a habit from when he worked on a HOA lawsuit 5 years ago. That case had opened his eyes to how these organizations could abuse power, and he'd made it a point to document everything. Since then, the phone's storage was nearly full of recordings from various HOA encounters. But this one would top them all. 3 Million's voice rang out. Ryan turned around and recognized Bob Patterson, the notorious real estate developer. Something twisted in his gut. Seeing Patterson here, the man had been circling the ranch like a vulture. Ever since Grandpa William died 2 years ago, Patterson had even shown up at the funeral, asking about selling before they'd put Grandpa on the ground. But how did he know about this illegal auction? Unless he and Barbara had planned this together. Ryan kept recording, making sure to capture every face in the crowd. Most were HOA members from Willowbrook Estates, the upscale neighborhood half a mile from the ranch. The sight of them on his property made Ryan's skin crawl. These were the same people who complained when the horses were visible from the road, who said the ranch lowered property values despite being there decades before their McMansions were built. They stood there in their designer clothes and oversized sunglasses, treating his family's legacy like a yard sale. One woman was actually taking selfies with the ranch house in the background, already planning her Instagram posts about the amazing deal she might score the auctioneer's assistant. A nervous young man in an ill-fitting suit kept shuffling papers and glancing at Barbara for approval. Even he seemed to know something wasn't right about this whole setup. Flashback hit him hard. 6 months ago, Barbara started sending ridiculous violations from horses neighing too loud at 3 in the afternoon to hay smell, causing air pollution. There was even one time she called 911 reporting horses looking at her with threatening eyes. The police had actually shown up for that one, only to leave laughing when they realized the complaint was about horses being horses. Ryan had ignored them all, thinking she just needed attention. Last week, before his trip, Ryan received a HOA warning about grass exceeding regulation height by 0.5 in. He'd just shaken his head and laughed. But now, looking at the blonde lawyer next to Barbara, holding a thick stack of papers, Ryan understood this was a carefully prepared plan. Blood boiled in his veins, but he held back. But Grandpa had taught him a smart horse doesn't kick a brick wall, it finds a way to jump over it. His phone buzzed a missed call from Dad. Why is he calling at this hour? Ryan wondered, but decided to deal with this first. Richard Morrison rarely called during business hours unless something was seriously wrong. The timing felt too coincidental to ignore. Completely, the crowd was getting excited now, with several more bids coming in. 4 million, 4, 5. Barbara's eyes gleamed with each higher number. Going once at 4.5 million, she shouted, banging a gavel she'd apparently brought from home. It looked like a child's toy in her manicured hands, but she wielded it like a symbol of absolute power. Going twice. That's when Ryan decided he'd seen enough of this circus time to shut it down. Ryan calmly walked toward the crowd. Several people recognized him, their eyes widening. The whispers started immediately. That's the owner. What's he doing?
Here, Barbara said. He abandoned the property. Barbara was intoxicated with the microphone when she caught Ryan's gaze. A moment of silence stretched tight as a guitar string. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: surprise, fear, anger, and finally settling on false confidence. Oh, Barbara recovered with a fake smile. Ryan, you're back early. We're just having a community event. Her voice dripped honey, but her eyes shot daggers. The blonde lawyer shifted nervously clearly.
Not expecting the actual owner to show up. Community event? Ryan smirked. On my private property? The crowd started murmuring, phones coming out to record the confrontation. Property. Barbara laughed mockingly. You should read the HOA laws again when you're absent for over 72 hours without notice and have unresolved violations. The HOA has the right to temporarily seize property to ensure community safety. The lawyer stepped up, holding up a stack of papers. This is a legal seizure order with Judge Carter's seal. Ryan recognized the seal. Judge Carter, Barbara's golf buddy, the same judge who somehow always ruled in HOA's favor. But Ryan had done his homework long ago, especially after helping draft property laws for Texas. Interesting. Ryan took out his phone, still recording everything. But do you all know that I helped write Texas property code? HOA only has authority over properties within HOA boundaries. Barbara's smile froze on her face like bad plastic surgery and Willow Creek Ranch. Ryan continued loud enough for everyone to hear. Was established in 1963, Willowbrook Estates, 2018, which means he let the words hang in the air, watching realization dawn on several faces in the crowd. Some of the smarter ones were already backing away, suddenly very interested in their phones, which means you have zero authority here. This auction, completely illegal. That seizure order, invalid. The moment it was signed, the blonde lawyer's face went pale as she flipped through her papers. She whispered urgently to Barbara, but the HOA president waved her off dismissively. Barbara had gone too far to back down. Now suddenly Barbara grabbed the microphone. Call 911, there's a trespasser threatening the security of our event. Within 10 minutes, 2 police cars arrived with lights flashing. Barbara had staged a perfect drama. She pretended to tremble, tears streaming down her face. Who knows where they came from? Clutching Officer Martinez's arm, the cop familiar with her.
Record. Martinez looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. His expression, that of a man who dealt with Barbara's theatrics one too many times, officer. This man threatened me. He said he would. Barbara pretended to choke up, pressing a lace
handkerchief to her eyes. The handkerchief, Ryan noticed, was completely dry. Despite her tears, Martinez, with his beer belly and tired eyes, sighed deeply. You again, Miss Mitchell. What number is this for the month? He pulled out a folder that looked disturbingly thick. According to department statistics, you've called 52 times this month. 52 times Ms. Mitchell. The crowd gasped at the number. Some people started recording this interaction, too, Martinez continued, flipping through pages. Let's see. You called about suspicious breathing. From the ranch turned out to be horses sleeping. You reported agricultural terrorism when they spread fertilizer. Oh, and my personal favorite assault with a deadly weapon when a butterfly from their garden landed on your car. The crowd started snickering. Even some HOA members looked embarrassed. Barbara's face flushed red under her makeup. But this time it's serious. Barbara pulled Martinez's arm dramatically. He threatened to kill me, she pointed, dramatically, at Ryan, who hadn't moved an inch. Her finger shook theatrically, but Ryan noticed she kept checking to make sure people were recording her performance. I've been standing still this whole time, Ryan said, calmly, still recording video. On his phone, Sir, who are you? Martinez asked wearily. Clearly, exhausted from dealing with Barbara's antics, his partner. A younger officer was already rolling his eyes and mouth, thinking here we go again, to Martinez. Ryan Morrison, I own this ranch.
And I have body cam footage of everything since I got out of the taxi, Martinez nodded appreciatively. Smart move, all right, let me see. He watched Ryan's footage on the phone, his eyebrows rising higher. With each second, the video clearly showed Ryan
arriving, seeing the illegal auction, and calmly walking over without any threatening behavior whatsoever. Mammy literally just walked up and asked questions, Martinez said. Flatly, Barbara started panicking. She could see her plan crumbling. But she couldn't back down in front of so many people. Her
reputation as a queen would be ruined. Her eyes darted around wildly, looking for support from the crowd, but even her usual allies were avoiding eye contact. He threatened to kill me, Barbara suddenly screamed. I heard it clearly. He said he'd
have horses trample me. The accusation was so absurd that someone in the crowd actually laughed out loud. The crowd buzzed with whispers. Some people started recording videos from multiple angles. This was turning into premium drama content. One teenager was already uploading to social media with the caption, "Hua Karen loses it at a legal auction." Ryan calmly took out his phone. Lucky for us, I've been recording audio since I got out of the taxi. Officer, would you like to hear it? Martinez nodded, looking like he was trying not to smile. The recording played, clearly showing only Barbara's voice screaming about the auction with no threats whatsoever. Mitchell Martinez pulled out a chart that looked professionally made. According to statistics, you've made false reports in 87% of your 312 calls over the past 3 years. There was that time you called saying UFO was attacking because a plane flew overhead. He showed the chart to the crowd, who gasped at the visual representation of Barbara's abuse of emergency services. The chart had different categories: false threats, 127 calls, noise complaints about nature, 89 calls imaginary trespassing, 96 calls. The crowd started laughing. Barbara's face turned red under her makeup. She wasn't giving up. Pulling out another phone from her jacket, I'm calling 911 again. He has a weapon. The hands fumbled with the phone. Desperation clear in every movement. Martinez looked at Ryan's hands with exaggerated concern. What weapon is she talking about? My iPhone. Ryan held up his phone. But to Ms. Mitchell, I guess everything's a weapon. He wiggled
it mockingly, which got more laughs from the crowd. Barbara screamed that phone could explode, like the Note 7 call the bomb squad. Martinez rubbed his forehead. Barbara, that's an iPhone 14, someone in the crowd shouted. This
is better than reality TV, which got more laughs. Another person yelled, someone get this woman a Snickers. Barbara was now sweating through her foundation, real perspiration finally appearing, her perfectly styled hair was starting to wilt in the Texas heat, making her look increasingly unhinged. She looked around for support, but many HOA members were avoiding her gaze. Some were quietly trying to leave, realizing they might be accomplices to fraud. In desperation, Barbara pulled out yet another phone from her. "Jackie, I'm calling 911. There's a terrorist here." Her voice cracked with hysteria. "Stop it," Martinez grabbed the phone. "You're wasting emergency resources. Last month you called 17 times just because horses were neighing too loud at 3 in the afternoon. You said it was acoustic assault, but... Barbara looked around wildly, her carefully constructed world falling apart. "He's a cyber terrorist. He hacks into systems." She was grasping at straws, now her voice getting higher and more desperate with each word. "I said I designed security systems," Ryan corrected patiently, like talking to a child, "and helped draft Texas property laws, not hacking." He spoke slowly and clearly, making sure everyone could hear the difference. Martinez shook his head. "Miss Mitchell, if you call 911 one more time with false reasons, I'll arrest you. This is your final warning. 13 times is more than enough." Ryan watched Barbara with mixed emotions. This woman clearly had serious psychological issues with control, but remembering all the ridiculous threatening letters and the way she'd harassed old texts while he was caring for the horses, any sympathy evaporated. "Officer Martinez." Ryan turned to the cop. "I want to file charges for trespassing and fraud." "All right," Barbara suddenly smiled the smile of a mad woman. "You want to play with the law? I'll show you the real power of HOA." She turned to the lawyer. "Call Mr. Morrison right now." Ryan frowned. "Morrison? Which Morrison?" It couldn't be after a few seconds on the phone. The lawyer handed it to Barbara. "Hello, Richard," Barbara said into the phone. "Voice sweet as syrup. I need you to handle a small problem at your father's ranch." Ryan felt like lightning struck him. Richard Morrison, his father, Dad. Ryan couldn't believe his ears when the familiar voice came through. The speaker. "Ryan, what are you doing there? Aren't you supposed to be in California?" "I came back early, and Barbara Mitchell here is trying to illegally auction off the ranch." Ryan's voice was steady, but his mind was racing. Why was his father involved with this woman? The question burned in his mind like acid. A long silence on the other end. The crowd was dead silent. Everyone sensing the drama had reached a new peak. Even the birds seemed to stop, chirping, as if nature itself was holding its breath for what came next. Richard Morrison's voice was cold. "What are you doing at Willow Creek Ranch?" His tone suggested he knew exactly what she was doing and didn't approve. There was a weight to his words that spoke of regret and old debts coming due. "Oh, Richard." Barbara switched to a sickeningly sweet voice. "You remember last year when I helped you with the Patterson case?" She drew out each word, savoring the power she held over a respected. Judge Ryan felt his stomach tighten. The Patterson case, the biggest land corruption case in Texas, his father had won the prosecution. Thanks to testimony from a secret witness, the case had made Richard Morrison's career, cementing his position as chief. Judge, the pieces were starting to fall into place in the worst possible way. It was like watching a horrible accident in slow motion, unable to look away or stop it. "Barbara, we had a clear agreement." Richard Morrison's voice was stern, but Ryan could hear something else underneath fear. "I'm grateful for your help." But his voice caught slightly on the word grateful, as if it physically hurt to say it. "Grateful." Barbara cut him off, her voice turning sharp as a blade. "Or have you forgotten that I bent the truth a little to help you?" She was playing with him now, cat and mouse, enjoying every second of his discomfort. The silence was deafening. Ryan remembered how stressed his father had been during the Patterson trial, the pressure to win, to keep His position as Chief Judge Richard had lost weight, stopped sleeping, snapped at family dinners. But surely his father wouldn't have Dad. Ryan kept his voice calm despite the storm. Inside what's going on, his words were measured, giving his father a chance to explain before jumping to conclusions. But deep down, he already knew the truth was going to hurt. Ryan Richards' voice sounded exhausted, like a man carrying a weight too heavy for too long. Last year, Barbara was a key witness. She testified that she saw Patterson taking bribes at the Riverside Golf Club on March 15th. Her testimony was detailed, convincing, but he paused, and Ryan could hear the weight of guilt in that silence. It was the pause of a man about to confess his greatest shame. But it was a lie, Barbara said, triumphantly, practically dancing with glee. I never saw anything. I wasn't even at the golf club. That day, I was in Houston getting Botox. She laughed at her own clever deception. But Richard needed to win the case too. Keep his position as chief judge. The governor was watching. The press was circling like sharks. And I needed his help for the HOA. Ryan felt like he'd been punched in the gut. His father, the most upright man he knew, had used false testimony. The man who taught him about integrity, who'd grounded him for lying about homework, had built his career on a lie. The crowd was recording everything. Phones held high. This was going viral for sure. Instead of getting angry, Ryan calmly pulled out his laptop from his backpack. Miss Mitchell, do you know what's special about the Patterson case? He kept his voice level, professional, even as his world tilted on its axis. Special. Barbara frowned, not liking where this was going. Her confidence wavered, slightly sensing a trap, but not seeing it. Yet every court session is recorded, and Ryan smiled grimly. Just designed the digital storage system for Texas courts, which means he opened the laptop, typing a few command lines with practiced ease. I have access to everything, including your testimony. The laptop screen glowed in the afternoon sun, reflecting off Barbara's increasingly pale face. Barbara's face went from red to white in seconds. And you know what? Ryan continued typing, his fingers flying across the keyboard. My AI facial recognition software found something interesting in the video. There are moments when you're moving strangely, like you're reading from notes hidden on the witness stand. Your eye movements follow a pattern, left to right, pause, left to right. Classic reading behavior. You have no proof, Barbara screamed, but her voice cracked with fear. She was scrambling. Now her carefully laid plans crumbling faster than she could adapt. Oh, but I do. Janet Rodriguez stepped out from the crowd, because I'm the one who wrote the notes for you, and I kept a copy. I've been waiting for this moment for 3 years. Her voice was strong, filled with righteous anger. The crowd gasped. Janet had been standing there the whole time, watching, waiting for the perfect moment. She positioned herself strategically close enough to hear everything, but far enough to avoid suspicion. Her timing was impeccable. Flashback hit Janet hard. All the times Barbara had harassed her, threatened her, used her after her husband's gambling. Problem: Barbara had forced her to become HOA secretary, holding the debt over her head. But Janet had been collecting evidence, recording meetings, copying documents. She'd turned her prison into an arsenal. Today's the day you pay. Janet's voice was strong. Janet pulled out a folder thick with evidence. 3 years of fraud, blackmail, and abuse of power. Every illegal fee, every forged document, every threatening letter. And yes, the original notes you read from during the Patterson trial. She fanned the papers out like a deck of cards, each one a nail in Barbara's coffin. The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to see the evidence of their tyrants. Crime. Stop! Barbara panicked, her voice reaching a pitch that could shatter glass. "Richard."
Tell your son." But Richard Morrison had heard enough. His voice was firm, the voice of a man who'd finally found his backbone. "Ryan, do what you need to do, Barbara Mitchell. Our agreement is over." There was relief in his voice, like a man finally
Putting down a burden he'd carried too long. No, Barbara went wild, her carefully styled hair flying as she spun around. "I'll expose everything. I'll tell everyone. You believed false testimony." Richard cut her off, his voice steady now. "Yes, I was wrong to trust you, and I'll take responsibility, but I won't let you destroy my father's ranch." A quick flashback showed the crushing pressure Richard had faced during the Patterson trial, the fear of losing his position, and the terrible decision to trust Barbara. It was clear he'd regretted it every day since the memory haunted him, visible in the lines on his face. Barbara was like a cornered animal. Now she pulled out another phone from her skirt. "I'm calling 911, there's corruption, thud." Janet Rodriguez had just used her purse to knock the phone out of Barbara's hand. "Sorry," Janet shrugged, slippery hands. "But you should know I also recorded all 312 of your fake 911 calls, every single one archived and categorized, my personal favorite. When you reported the Moon for loitering over your property, Barbara's eyes went wild with rage and fear. "I will destroy everything," Barbara screamed. "Ryan Morrison, you'll regret this." Activate Plan Z, the blonde lawyer, looked horrified. "Barbara, no, do it," Barbara commanded, with the authority of a woman who'd ruled through fear for too long. The lawyer's hands shook as she made a call. "Ghost activate Plan Z, target Willow Creek Ranch." Her voice trembled, clearly terrified of whoever was on the other end of that call. Ryan's phone buzzed immediately. A text from an unknown number appeared on screen. "Tech bomb activated, 60 minutes to self-destruct. Ghost." The message included a skull emoji, because apparently even legendary hackers had a sense
of drama. The crowd started murmuring nervously. "Ghost, the legendary hacker who'd supposedly breached Pentagon systems. What's Plan Z?" Ryan kept his voice steady, though his mind was racing. Barbara laughed maniacally through tears and smeared makeup. "Oh, didn't I mention I hired the best hacker? Money can buy if I can't have this ranch. I'll destroy the entire county's financial system." Her laughter echoed across the ranch, the sound of a woman who'd rather watch the world burn than admit
Defeat Plan Z. Ryan frowned at the message on his phone. What else was Barbara hiding? This woman was more dangerous than he'd thought. "Don't worry about the message," Barbara screamed from where she was being held by Martinez. "Find my lawyer, she has." The red USB, but Martinez had already checked the lawyer's car left 2 minutes ago, headed north. He spoke into his radio, putting out an alert for the vehicle. "No." Barbara collapsed to her knees. "The red file, all my secrets." Her voice was desperate now, realizing her leverage was disappearing. "What secrets?" Ryan asked, though he was already connecting to his network, preparing for whatever Ghost had planned. Janet Rodriguez stepped forward again. "Let me tell you, Barbara collects secrets about everyone to blackmail them, but ironically, she has the most secrets of all." The crowd leaned in, hungry for more drama. This was better than any TV show, you know. Something Martinez asked, pulling out his 3 years as secretary. "I know everything." Janet opened her phone, scrolling through files. Barbara Mitchell isn't even her real name. She's Catherine Wilson, insurance fraud from Florida, changed her name.
"And ran to Texas, that's not true,"
Barbara screamed, but her eyes showed pure panic. "There's more," Janet continued, warming to her audience. 2 ex-husbands didn't divorce her because she was difficult. They ran away after discovering she faked illnesses to scam insurance money. I have copies of all the records. The crowd was buzzing now. HOA members looked at Barbara with horror in their eyes. The woman they'd followed, who'd ruled their neighborhood with an iron fist, was a complete fraud. Some started backing away, as if crime was contagious. Barbara saw her empire crumbling in real time. No, Barbara was like a trapped animal. She ran toward her car, pulling out phone number 7 from her shoe. 911 emergency. There's a bomb at Willow Creek Ranch. Martinez roared. Barbara, false bomb reports are a federal crime. But Barbara didn't stop. There's a real bomb underground. Ghost installed it. Everyone froze. The word bomb had that effect, even when coming from a known liar. What are you saying? Ryan's face went pale. Even he hadn't expected her to go this far. Barbara laughed maniacally. Oh yes, my plan. Not an explosive bomb, but a tech bomb, a server containing a virus that can wipe out all financial data for the entire county. Ghost, the hacker who once breached Pentagon, set it up, and it will activate in... She looked at her watch. 58 minutes. Just then a loud whinny echoed across the ranch. Thunder, Ryan's black thoroughbred, suddenly galloped out, blocking Barbara's path. Tex appeared with a mischievous smile on his weathered face. Thought he might want to join the fun.
The old man said. Barbara tried to dodge around Thunder, but the smart horse kept moving to block her. Finally, she tripped and fell face first into a fresh pile of horse manure. My face! Barbara screamed through the manure. Call 911, I'm being
attacked. Her words were muffled by the organic material. Silence mode 5.0 coming right up. Martinez slapped duct tape over her mouth, finally ending her 911 calling spree. The crowd burst into laughter. Someone shouted, "This is going viral for sure." And karma delivered by horse. Barbara writhed on the ground, her pink suit now brown, her perfect hair. Destroyed duct tape, muffling her continued attempts to call for help. Tech bomb! Martinez pulled out his radio. I need backup, Aunt Barbara mumbled frantically through the tape. Even with her mouth covered, the urgency in her voice was clear. The blonde lawyer, who had only gone to get coffee, returned, looking panicked. Barbara's telling the truth. She hired ghosts from the dark web. If strangers approach the server, the system will auto-activate. Ryan looked at Barbara, lying on the ground, with horse manure on her face. Still trying to call 911 through duct tape, this woman was truly ready to destroy an entire county's financial system. So how do we stop it? Richard Morrison asked over the phone, his voice tight with concern. Only Barbara knows the code. The lawyer said shakily, and look at her. Barbara was still on the ground, laughing hysterically, through the tape manure sliding down her cheeks. Ryan took a deep breath. Fine, I'll handle it myself. Son, what are you going to do? Richard inquired anxiously. What am I best at? Ryan turned towards the horse barn. Hack back against Ghost. Ghost breached Pentagon, the lawyer warned. You can't possibly watch me, Ryan said, firmly. But deep inside he wasn't sure if he could beat the legendary hacker still. He had to try. The financial lives of 500,000 people depended on it. Ghost. Ryan repeated the infamous hacker's name. The crowd murmured nervously. Everyone had heard stories about Ghost, the mysterious figure who supposedly hacked everything from Pentagon to Swiss banks. Barbara hired Ghost. Martinez's face showed genuine concern. Now this had escalated far beyond a simple HOA dispute. The lawyer nodded shakily. Bitcoin Barbara said it was a worthy investment to get the rant. Her hands trembled as she spoke, clearly terrified of being associated with federal
cybercrimes. Martinez quickly searched on his tablet. I'm checking. Ghost is a legendary mystery hacker Breached Pentagon, NSA, even Swiss banking systems. No one knows their real identity. He looked up grimly. This is way above my pay grade from the
police car. Barbara was somehow still trying to call 911 by hitting phone buttons with her nose. Even with her hands cuffed and mouth taped, she hadn't given up. How many phones does she have? Let's find out, said Martinez in awe. Ryan told Janet, do you know where Barbara hides phones? The crowd watched in awe as Martinez carefully gathered all 7 of Barbara's phones, saying 313 fake calls is enough, and placed them in an evidence bag. Jan. Martinez and Text descended into the old horse cellar, where the lawyer indicated a secret entrance. And sure enough, behind the rotten wood was a modern steel door with an electronic lock. Password? Ryan asked. But Barbara didn't tell me, the lawyer said over the radio. Important to Barbara? Try the day she was elected HOA president, Janet thought over the radio. Ryan attempted, but his phone's timer indicated that there were 45 minutes left in the ghost's countdown. Wait, Tex exclaimed abruptly as he studied the steel door. I've seen this door before. You have? Ryan turned to the old man. Yeah, when we built this cellar 40 years ago for your grandfather, the pieces started clicking. In Ryan's mind, a flashback hit 1983 during the Cold War. Grandfather William built a secret shelter, but after the war ended, he sealed it and never mentioned.
So Barbara's using the old shelter, Ryan reasoned. But how did she know about it? Public records, Janet said. Through the radio, I just checked. Barbara worked as a secretary for the construction company that built this before she moved on.
To insurance fraud, the irony wasn't lost on Ryan. His grandfather's survival shelter was now being used to threaten the entire county. 40 minutes left. Ryan tried another password. 15,071,018. Most of the date, Barbara's children disowned her. The door clicked open. How did you know? Martinez was amazed. Psychology? Ryan shrugged. Control freaks like Barbara are always obsessed with their biggest failures. Inside the room was full of blinking servers. In the center was a countdown screen. 3845, 3844. The air hummed with electricity and danger. Can you do it? Tex asked worriedly. Seeing the complex setup, Ryan sat down at the control console. Fingers starting their dance across the keyboard, code flowed like a waterfall on the screen. First, firewall breached. Second one tougher. His fingers never stopped moving. 35 minutes. Ryan. Barbara's voice suddenly came through the intercom. She'd somehow activated the system, even while restrained. I know you're there. Want to know a secret?
Shut up! Martinez yelled. At the speaker, Ghost isn't just a hacker. Barbara continued, her voice distorted through the duct tape, but still understandable. He used to work for NSA. He knows everything about your systems. Ryan Morrison, that explained.
A lot an insider turned. Rogue would know exactly how to exploit government systems. What do you want? Ryan asked. Eyes never leaving the screen, his fingers continued their relentless assault on Ghost's defenses. Release me. Delete all evidence and...
This ranch becomes mine. Barbara's demands were desperate but firm. Impossible, Richard Morrison said through the radio. Barbara, stop this. Think about your children, my children. Barbara laughed bitterly. Emily and Josh abandoned me 5 years ago, called
me toxic. I have nothing left to lose. Her voice cracked with genuine pain. For a moment, Ryan's fingers paused. 30 minutes left on the countdown. Ryan suddenly stopped typing. Completely, a memory surfaced. Barbara, Ryan's voice softened. I met Emily at a tech conference last year. Silence fell over the intercom, even the crowd outside watching on phones, as someone live streamed from inside, went quiet. She keeps your photo in her wallet, the one of you teaching her to ride a bike. The only sound was the hum of servers and the ticking countdown. You're lying," Barbara whispered, but hope crept into her voice. Emily said, "No matter how bad things got, you're still her mother and she still loves you." Through the speakers, they could hear Barbara starting to cry. Real tears this time, not the fake ones from earlier 25 minutes. Crack the second firewall. Shattered under Ryan's assault, entering final firewall, Ryan announced, but this one ghost designed it special. The screen displayed a message. "Hello, Ryan Morrison, I've been expecting you." "Ghost?" Martinez whistled low. "They know your name." Ryan laughed grimly. "Of course." Ghost researches targets thoroughly, but they made one mistake. "What mistake?" Tax asked. "The framework they're using?" Ryan pointed at the code, Secure Vault 2. "As your own, I wrote it in 2019 for my first startup, and I always leave myself a back door." His fingers flew across the keyboard with renewed energy. 20 minutes code scrolled by at impossible speeds. "No," Barbara screamed. Through the intercom, Ghost said, "No one." Could Ghost forgot something? Ryan cut her off, never stopping his typing. The creator of a tool always knows how to destroy it. The final firewall fought back, throwing up new defenses as fast as Ryan could break them, but Ryan knew every weakness, every vulnerability he'd accidentally left in his younger, less experienced code. It was like fighting a younger version of himself. 15 minutes crack, the final firewall shattered. The screen displayed, "Enter self-destruct code 3. "Barbara!" yelled Ryan. "What's the code?" Silence except for muffled sobbing. 15 minutes left on the countdown. "I'll die with the secret," Barbara mumbled through tears and duct tape. "No!" Ryan shook his head. "You'll live and watch Emily be happy."
"Love you, Millie, that's the code, isn't it?" Barbara broke down completely, sobbing uncontrollably. Ryan typed it in. The screen flashed green code correct. System shutting down. The countdown stopped at 14:23. The servers began powering down one by
one, their threatening hum fading to silence. When Ryan emerged from the cellar, he found Barbara still lying on the ground, shoulders shaking with real sobs. Now the duct tape had been removed, but she made no attempt to speak or call anyone. She looked
broken. "Thank you," she whispered, as Ryan walked past. For Emily."
The crowd outside erupted in cheers and applause. Someone shouted, "The hero returns and Ryan for president." But Ryan barely heard them. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving him exhausted. Richard Morrison's helicopter landed on the ranch lawn. He'd flown from the courthouse in 20 minutes. "Son, you make me proud." Richard embraced Ryan tightly. "And I'm sorry I was wrong to trust Barbara." Father and son stood there for a moment, the weight of the Peton confession hanging between them. "You were under pressure," Ryan understood, "but now everything will be okay." "Actually," Richard shook his head, "I'm resigning as chief judge. I'll face whatever consequences come from using false testimony." Ryan saw his father in a new light, a flawed man, but one willing to face his mistakes. "I want to confess," Barbara suddenly spoke up from where Martinez was helping her stand everything. Every crime from the past 10 years, Martinez started recording 312 false 911 calls, insurance, fraud, document forgery, blackmail. The list went on, and Barbara interrupted, looking directly at Ryan. "Bob Patterson, he's behind everything." Patterson, Ryan remembered. "The man who bid $3 million. What's his involvement?" "He promised me 10% if I got the ranch. He wants to build $1 billion resort." But more importantly, Barbara met Ryan's eyes. "He has a 40-year grudge against your grandfather." The pieces were falling into place. 40 years ago? Barbara continued. Patterson and your grandfather were partners, but Patterson committed fraud. Your grandfather reported him. Patterson went to prison for 15 years. Text nodded slowly. That's right. I remember that case. Patterson swore revenge. As if on cue, Ryan's phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. Nice work, Morrison boy, but the game's just beginning. Patterson. Ryan gritted
his teeth. This wasn't over. Barbara laughed bitterly. I was just a pawn. Patterson's the real chess master. She looked older. Suddenly the fight got out of her. He knows things about this ranch. Things your grandfather buried, literally like what Martinez
asked. There's oil under this land shale. Oil worth billions. Patterson's obsessed with it. Let him run. Richard Morrison shook his head. With Barbara's confession and the evidence, we have enough. But Ryan knew better. Patterson wasn't the type to give up easily, and with billions at stake, he'd do anything. As Barbara was led away in the police car, she made one last confession. Ryan Patterson won't stop. He has resources, connections, and he knows your family's weakness. Ryan asked. Barbara's eyes were sad. He knows you actually care about people. He'll use that against you. The police car drove away, taking Barbara to face justice for her crimes. The crowd began dispersing the show. Apparently over HOA members slunk away, embarrassed to have followed Barbara blindly. So it's over? Tex asked. Padding Thunder, who had wandered over the ranch, is safe for now, Ryan said. But his phone buzzed again. Another message from Check on your horses, boy, an old friend. Ryan's blood ran cold. He ran toward the stables. Tex and Martinez right behind him. 20 thoroughbred horses, his grandfather's legacy, were standing unsteadily, eyes glazed and unfocused. Thunder, who'd helped stop Barbara, was trembling and could barely stand. Poison text checked quickly. Someone drugged them all on the wall, written in red paint cell, or let them die. 24 hours, your grandfather's old friend Patterson hadn't just attacked him, he'd attacked the living legacy of the Morrison family. These horses were descendants of the original stock. Grandfather William had bred 60 years ago. Some bloodlines went back even further. They weren't just animals. They were family history on 4 legs. Ketamine, high dose, text, diagnosed, won't kill them, but will cause permanent brain damage if not treated within 24 hours. Ryan's hands clenched into fists. First, Barbara's circus, then Ghost's tech bomb. Now this Patterson was escalating. Fast cost to treat all. 20, Martinez asked, already knowing it. Would be bad, about $2 million, Tech said grimly. And that's if we can get enough vets here in time. The aftermath of Barbara's arrest and Ghost's defeat felt hollow as Ryan stared at his poisoned horses. Thunder gave a weak whinny, recognizing his owner. Despite the drugs coursing through his system, the other horses swayed on unsteady legs, their noble heads hanging low. This wasn't just an attack on property, it was an assault on living creatures who'd done nothing wrong except exist. On land a greedy man wanted, it wasn't the real threat. Ryan muttered. They were just Barbara's tool. Patterson's the puppet master. Richard put a hand on his son's shoulder. We'll figure this out. These horses won't die on our watch. Just then a man emerged from the shadows of the barn, tall, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit. Despite the rural setting, Bob Patterson looked like he'd stepped out of a corporate boardroom, not a horse stable. Hello, Richard. Patterson smiled coldly, and young Morrison, just like your grandfather, stubborn to the end. What did you do to my horses? Ryan's voice was dangerous. Ketamine overdose, Patterson shrugged. Casually. Temporary if treated within 24 hours. Treatment cost about $2 million for all 20, I know because I checked. His casual cruelty made Ryan's skin crawl. This man had planned everything down to the penny. Why, Ryan asked, through gritted teeth, I never did anything to you. No, but your grandfather did. Patterson's eyes blazed with decades-old hatred. William Morrison, the man who destroyed my life. Because he wouldn't sell a ranch. You destroyed your own life by fraud, Richard interjected. Fraud? Patterson laughed. I was creative with geological surveys. There's shale oil worth billions under this land, but William wouldn't sell. The pieces were. Clicking together, Patterson pulled out a contract. Now his grandson will make it right sign over the ranch. I'll pay $5 million or watch the horses die. Text, checked. Thunder again, worry creasing his weathered face. The old man had helped birth some
of these horses. Watching them suffer was killing him. You're insane, Ryan said. Poisoning innocent animals for revenge business.
Patterson corrected. Your grandfather cost me everything, my company, my reputation. 15 years of my life in prison time to pay up. He waved the contract again. $5 million is more than fair. You saved the horses. I get what should have been mine 40 years ago. I need time, Ryan said, his mind racing. He couldn't let the horses die, but he couldn't give up the ranch either. 24 hours, Patterson tapped his watch tick-tock. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and don't bother calling more police. I've done nothing illegal. The drugs were administered by someone who can't be traced. Good luck proving anything. He walked away whistling, confident in his victory. Ryan wasted no time. He immediately went live on every platform. Willow Creek, ranch is under attack. 20 horses have been poisoned. We need $2 million in 6 hours to save them. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Donating 1,000 from dev team. San Francisco, our company, sending 50,000.
I remember Mr. Morrison. He saved my dad in '95 within 3 hours. $1.5 million. The internet was amazing when it rallied for a cause, but they still needed 500,000 more. The horses were getting worse. Their breathing labored. Text was nearly in tears.
These weren't just animals to him, they were his life's work. I'll give the last 500.
0. Everyone turned around. Barbara Mitchell stood there, handcuffed between 2 police officers. Barbara Ryan couldn't believe it. Don't get me wrong. Barbara's voice was cold. I'm not helping you, but Patterson. She gritted her teeth. He promised me
10% if I got the ranch. Then he betrayed me, said I was too much drama even. Facing federal charges, Barbara's wounded pride burned bright. So Ryan asked, so I want him to fall. Barbara looked straight at him. My accounts aren't fully frozen yet, officer. May I transfer money? Martinez nodded. Barbara used the police phone to transfer 500. 00, by the way. Barbara added, Patterson's deathly allergic to pollen severely, and he doesn't know the secret about the oil emergency. Vet teams arrived within the hour. Medication was administered to each horse. One by one, they began to recover. Thunder whinnied, strongly nuzzling Ryan's shoulder. The crowd that had gathered cheered as each horse stood steadier. The live stream comments were going wild with celebration and relief. Now for Patterson, Ryan faced the camera, still streaming. He wanted to play dirty fine, but I know something he doesn't. He called Patterson. I have a different proposal. The horses are saved. Patterson sounded surprised over the phone. Impressive, but the ranch, you want the oil. Meet me in 2 hours, I'll give you what you want. Patterson arrived at the ranch 2 hours later with bodyguards. He was supremely confident, victory already tasting sweet in his mind terms. He asked with a smirk. Ryan pulled out an old letter. This is a letter my grandfather left for you. Patterson frowned, taking the letter with suspicious hands. Bob, if you're reading this, it means you came back. I knew you would return because of greed. Yes, there's shale oil under Willow Creek, but I also discovered that drilling would contaminate the underground water supply, the only water source for 3 counties, 500.
0 people I chose. Silence not for money, but for conscience. You were once a good friend. I forgive you for the fraud, but I can't let you destroy the lives of 500,000 people. Please give up. Bob, there's still time. William Morrison Patterson's
hands shook. As the letter fell to the ground, he knew. Patterson mumbled, "And now I know too." Ryan said, "I had it verified. The 2020 geological report confirms drilling would cause an environmental disaster. But, the money," Patterson swayed on his feet. "Money." Tech stepped forward. "Mr. Morrison turned down billions to protect the community. That's what a real man does." Patterson looked around. His bodyguards had quietly left, not wanting to be associated with someone willing to poison water for
500,000 people. He was alone. "I can still sue."
Patterson shouted desperately, "I have rights!" "Rights to what? You can't." Ryan's face turned white as he held out his phone and said, "I hacked your phone as you stepped in here. Every text, every call with Ghost, the plan to poison horses, it's all been submitted to the FBI." "Remember Ghost's framework had a back door?" Ryan smiled. "And you hired Ghost, which means the sound of sirens filled the air. A convoy of FBI vehicles pulled up to the ranch. Bob Patterson, an FBI agent, stepped out. You're under arrest for ecological terrorism, animal poisoning, and conspiracy to commit public harm." As Patterson was led away in handcuffs, he looked back at Ryan. "You're just like William?" "No," Ryan shook his head. "I'm my own person, but I learned from him that the most important things can't be bought with money from another police car." Barbara shouted, "Hey, Patterson should have paid my commission. Karma is real." The crowd laughed. Even facing serious charges, Barbara hadn't lost her sarcastics edge as the police cars drove away, taking both villains to face justice. Ryan stood looking over the ranch. The horses were recovering. The financial bomb was defused, and both Patterson and Barbara would face justice. Tex clapped him on the shoulder. "Your grandfather would be proud." Richard hugged his son. "I'm proud too, and I'm sorry for my part in this mess." "We all make mistakes," Ryan said. "What matters is making them right." 6 months later, Willow Creek Ranch had transformed. It wasn't just a horse ranch anymore. Ryan had turned it into a therapeutic riding center for special needs children, free of charge, a coding education center for local youth, and a nature preserve with protected groundwater. The oil remained untouched beneath the ground, protecting the water supply for 500,000 people. Barbara Mitchell got 5 years in prison plus 500 hours of community service, answering actual 911 calls. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, but there was good news. Emily had visited her mother for the first time in 5 years. Janet Rodriguez testified for leniency, noting Barbara had helped catch Patterson. Patterson received 10 years in federal prison. At 70, it was effectively a life sentence, maybe enough time to think about the cost of greed. Janet Rodriguez became the new HOA president of Willowbrook, HOA that actually served the community. Her first rule: nobody can call 911 more than 3 times a month without documentation. Richard Morrison resigned as chief judge and opened a law practice defending victims of HOA abuse. He'd found his calling in protecting others from the kind of manipulation he'd fallen victim to. And Ryan, he stood on the hill overlooking the ranch. With thunder beside him, his phone rang constantly with media requests. "Hi Ryan, this is Julia from National News. We want to do a feature on your David versus Goliath story." "Sorry," Ryan smiled, turning off his phone. "I'm busy teaching kids to code then riding horses." He looked down at the ranch where children laughed while learning to ride, where Janet taught women about their legal rights, where Tex told stories about William Morrison to eager young ears. This was what grandfather had really left him. Not just land, but a legacy of choosing community over cash. Grandpa Ryan whispered to the wind, "I protected it, not just the ranch, but everything you stood for." Thunder whinnied in agreement, strong and healthy again. The wind blew through the green pastures. Somewhere William Morrison was surely smiling. The ranch was safe, the water was protected,